Hey, how's it going, guys? Jack and Matt and my grandpa Tom here with the Toaster Break. And today we're checking to see if even a grandparent can build a gaming PC.
Building a PC in 2021 is a lot easier than you think, and we're gonna put that to the test today. But before we get into this video, let's hear a word from today's sponsor.
Today's video is brought to you by Aukey and their budget-friendly KMG6 full-size mechanical keyboard featuring a nice and bright red backlight, red linear switches designed for fast and quiet activation, double-shot molded ABS keycaps, and brushed metal panels that are extremely durable. If you want to move on from the membrane keyboard life and don't want to break the bank, then definitely consider the KMG6 from Aukey or any of the other awesome budget options that Aukey offers on their website. Check the link down below to learn more, and special thanks again to Aukey for sponsoring today's video.
So we have a pretty basic $600 plus gaming PC here that has an i3 and a cheap RX 560 graphics card. And we're basically just putting this to the test to see if putting the 7 components that makes up a gaming PC is really as easy or as hard as some people make it out to be.
So let's get right into it, shall we?
So for the processor, we have the Intel i3 10100. This is a 4-core 8-threaded processor, just to keep prices low. For the motherboard, we have the Asus Prime H510ME motherboard, one of the cheapest H510s you can get, under $100. You only get 2 RAM slots, but you do get the 2 4-pin for the CPU, so you could go all the way up to an i7 even on one of these boards. Now for RAM, we have 8 gigs running a dual channel of this, I don't even remember what it is, Larry's UDIM DDR4. That is 2666 megahertz. I think this is honestly just extra RAM we had lying around because why buy stuff when you already have it? Now for storage, we have a 500 gig NVMe M.2 SSD. This is a Mushkin Helix M.2 SSD, shout out to Mushkin. Now for the power supply, we have this EVGA 500 watt, I believe it's a W1. It's one that Matt picked up a while back on EVGA B-Stock, which we do highly recommend checking out B-Stock because you can find some really cool deals. It's actually a really nice one. You do get the kind of ugly cables, but that really doesn't matter. Overall, it's a nice 80 plus white rated power supply. It is 500 watts and it'll definitely get the job done. Now this right here is a beautiful creation that really only came in pre-builds. This is the RX 560D, and I cannot remember if this is a 2 gig or a 4 gig model. It's not even gonna say on here, so I couldn't tell you. We'll have it on screen. But this is like basically a proprietary 560 card that would have came in like Dell's, maybe some HP's, but you can really tell it's proprietary. Single lane, normally you're gonna get these in dual. It does not require any external power, so you just plop it in and you're good to go. Now for the case, we have the Morovol TW7, which is a really nice RGB case. We actually just used them in another build. Tempered side glass that's on hinges. You get 3, actually no, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know if that's correct, but it looks like it has 5 RGB fans. Maybe. On the box, who knows? I guess we'll find out. We didn't really open it to check. But overall though, it's a really good micro HX case. So how about we just go ahead and build this? All right, Tom, so first we're gonna put together the motherboard. So you know which one the motherboard is?
It's the motherboard.
It's the motherboard.
It is, exactly.
This is it right here. All right, you can go ahead and open it up. So like we said, this is an H510, relatively budget board. All right, so what I normally do is I'll take, you're gonna need a couple things out of this box. You're gonna need this. This is that cover that goes in the back. All right, so what I normally do, Tom, is I usually build the motherboard on top of the box. So you can just go ahead and set that on there. And so first thing we'll do is put the processor in. And I don't think this is something you've done before, right?
No, I haven't worked with any processors.
All right. So this is that Intel i3 that I was talking about. So the actual processor, and I'm gonna help you with this one because this is probably one of the more vital steps where this is probably the one step that most people, if they're going to mess up, would mess up because your processor, if you have an Intel one, does not have pins on it. The motherboard has the pins on it, and those pins are very fragile. So here is your processor. So if you want to take that, there's no pins on that, so you don't have to worry about breaking it. You should be able to just open it. There's like a little clip right there that opens up. All right, so once you get that out, just hang on to it. So now we're gonna pull up this bracket here, and this is where you just gotta be a little bit careful because you see all these pins under here. Mm-hmm. If any of those bend, it's pretty much broken. So there's gonna be a little arrow on the CPU, and it's right here. You see that tiny little arrow there?
Oh man. No.
Yeah, it's tiny. So do you notice this arrow right here? You're gonna line it up with that. Yep. And then you're just gonna drop it in. You don't have to put any pressure on it.
You're gonna do that, you want me to do it now?
Sure, go for it. All right, so it's dropped in. So then you take that and now just push and keep going, and then lock that under. Oh yeah, look at that. There you go. And I think that looks good.
Let me go get my glasses.
Okay.
Does that hurt if I put them on?
No, it won't. So now that we have the processor in, we need something to cool the processor. And I know you've seen this before. You've seen
Right.
the fans that go on the processor. So this is called the CPU fan and heat sink, because you got your fan here, and then this big chunk of aluminum is a heat sink. And this is the thermal paste. It's already pre-applied, so you don't have to do anything about that. One thing I am gonna go ahead and do is get this cable ready for you, because Intel's kind of weird, and they have their cable stuck inside of their fan when you get it. All right, so here's this. Make sure you don't touch the bottom so you don't get the thermal paste on you. And you're gonna line up, you see these holes here?
Yep.
Those holes will line up with these little pins. I honestly couldn't tell you which way it goes. You'll just have to kind of line it up. But it can only go on one way. Yep, that looks good. And so now you're gonna need to lift the board up with your hands and then kind of take your thumbs and push those pins down. Or if you need me to, I can do it. Sometimes it's really, Intel kind of sucks is they don't use screws.
Yeah, just check underneath and see if that one went
Yeah.
through.
So what we can do to make sure that they went in is you see this had the black parts in. I don't think that one went all the way. So where you just gotta break it. That's how you figure out. It's not locked. That's what else you gotta watch out for. Sometimes, yeah, do you hear how it went now? Yeah, the little arrows, if you turn them one way, it unlocks them so that they can come back out in case you need to move anything. So they're all through. And you can usually tell if it's good by just feeling it. It's pretty solid. So now this cable here is gonna plug into there. And that's the CPU fan header. That's what, controls the fan and everything. It can only go on one way. There you go. See, and that's one thing they've done with computers is they really tried to make it as, foolproof as possible, like can't plug anything in backwards. So I'm just gonna take these cables here and kind of hide them underneath the CPU so it's a little less ugly, because Intel has some pretty ugly coolers. All right, so we got the CPU cooler installed. So now here's your RAM kit. It's a clamshell once again, so you just kind of pry it open. Just be careful because sometimes they like to fly out when you open them. All right, so we got 2 sticks, so it's gonna be running in dual channel. So this one only opens on this side, so you're gonna bring both of those latches open. Yep. And then one at a time, you're gonna line this notch up with this notch. They can only go in one way once again, so you can't do it backwards or anything. And then once you get it lined up, you're gonna go straight down. Yeah. Good job. Now you just gotta do the other one. Same exact thing. And RAM is definitely a tricky one. It's not one that's like the CPU where there's really much damage you can do if you do it wrong. It just won't go in. And obviously if you really try to force it, you could break the lanes or something, but as you can see, it only goes in one way. There's really not any pins to bend. So we have one last thing to do on the motherboard, and that is storage. Can you believe that this is 500 gigabytes of storage? And now with this, you're going to need these special screws that they include. So these are called, they call them like M.2 screws basically. So this is going to go in here, but first we need to figure out where the screw goes to hold it in place. So let me see that real quick. So what I usually do is take it and then just make sure it's the right length. So it's gonna be this hole here. All right, so now I've screwed that in the rest of the way, just with your fingers, and then you can use these needle nose pliers to, just give it one extra little turn. Just don't do it too tight because, it's tiny. And it just pushes in pretty gently.
Above the other one?
Yes. Push it in a little bit further because it's not quite all the way in. There you go. So now, ready for this part? You see this tiny screw? You're gonna take that. You gotta kind of hold it down while you screw that in. All right, so we have the motherboard complete. We have the CPU with the heatsink on top. We have 2 sticks of RAM installed. We have our 500 gig NVMe SSD. So we have storage, CPU, the heart of the computer, and then the RAM. So it's basically ready to get installed inside of this case, but we'll probably get the power supply in first. So let's go ahead and do that. Now it's gonna be a little bit fancier of a case than what you've used before. So we like these cases because they have this. It's like a magnetic side panel on hinges. All right, so what I usually do is with this, you'll want to take the glass off. So just open it up. And then once you get it far enough open, you can lift up on the hinge and it'll just slide out. And you want to put that in a safe spot. So safe spot to me is against the wall where we know we're not going to kick it over. And then we're gonna take the rear panel off too. So that's these 2 screws. And then you just slide it out. It's going good. And then you're just gonna, you see that little handle, slide it back. Like towards you pretty much. I think you got it. There you go. And then I'll just put that in the same spot so we don't lose it. So let's go ahead and put in the power supply. This is, what's gonna power the whole entire build. Has a bunch of crazy cables on it, but we're only really using a few of the cables because this looks pretty intimidating, but we're only using 2 or 3 of the cables. Really 2 in this.
You cut them off?
I wouldn't recommend it, but you could. You can cut them off and then zip tie them or whatever, or shrink wrap them. But so with the power supply, we installed them basically upside down because you see you have a fan here. That fan is going to suck air through the bottom and then blow it out the back. So you just take this, put it in here like so, and then it comes with screws usually. Yep.
You want me to do that while you film it?
Sure. All right, so the power supply just needs 4 screws to hold it in. And you'll have to line up the holes.
Oh, in the back?
Yes.
Or the
And it looks like
side?
you're pretty close. It also looks like the back of the case is a little bit dented, so that's gonna make this a little bit more annoying, but hopefully everything still lines up. If not, you know what, that's what hammers were made for, I think. If you want, I can hold it while you screw it. Go up, there you go. All right, and then you have one here and then one in the bottom left. All right, so we got the power supply in. So now, I usually put in the motherboard next, but first we gotta put this in because the motherboard will go in like this. But then you see how this is all just open? You gotta put this shield in. And that basically just keeps dust and stuff like that out. So the I/O shield can be a little bit difficult. The audio port's always face down. So it's gonna go in like this, and then it just clips into place. Sometimes it's pretty annoying, and you usually have to use 2 hands. And I recommend pushing like on the corners and stuff. And don't cut yourself.
It's the hardest part to explain how to do.
Yeah, because you almost have to develop like a feel for it. So now, nope. You know what I'm
That
saying?
went in, didn't it?
Yeah, I think
I think so. But then you see up here, you almost have to like push down. Okay, now it's all in. You see how you can see all the little parts that it popped past. All right, so now you can go ahead and just lay the case down on its back. All right, and then I usually recommend just picking it up by the CPU fan, like the motherboard, because we're gonna put the motherboard in the case now.
Like that?
Yep, and then it's going to go in those, you see how all those holes line up? And then once you get it in, then you can use the back of the board to kind of put it where you need to be, but you see these holes, how they're lining up? So this is going to use fine thread screws, which I think the power supply actually came with a bunch of them. So you're gonna use these screws here. And once again, don't do these super tight, just kind of like finger tight. Yep. All right, and now the rest of them should just, well, I might have to still hold it for a second.
So we're okay over
You
there.
got one here and one there. He's got it. He really did get it. Yeah, sometimes this can be a total pain if you don't have a really good magnetic screwdriver. Our screwdrivers are old, so a lot of them, they're pretty stripped out, so they don't really hold the heads of the screws very well. Matt and I have been doing this so long though that usually doesn't stop us. We kind of just wallow them out even more every time. Fans are important. One screw and you're good. Linus Tech Tips would tell us 2 screws and no more. And then if you take out the fans more than once, don't do it, just don't do it. And I was wrong, this actually does only come with 2 fans. McAllister can go back and fix that, right? Is this our wild editor out in the wilderness?
Tell him right now he's watching this. Tell him to fix it.
McAllister, fix it. Freaking fix it. Look at that nice Toasty Rose merch, though. Teespring.com in the description down below. I think these screws were used. It literally looks like they sent the power supply back with a bag of used screws.
You can tell them that
What?
tell them I got Alzheimer's and
What else?
shaking disease.
Shaking disease? Okay.
I'm still doing it.
You're still doing it. So even a grandparent with ailments can do it, I guess. So the only connectors we actually have to use for this build are these 2. And then what we're gonna do with the rest of them that I'll just go ahead and do real quick because I am a seasoned cable management veteran is I'm going to take, all of these extra cables and not cut them. I know cutting them sounds like a good solution, but we're not gonna do that. I'm just gonna take them and then shove them into this hard drive cage so that it kind of hides them. Show Matt what I'm doing here. All right, so this one here, I'm gonna go ahead and feed through here for you. And we'll lay this back down. So these can be a little bit challenging at times, but this here is going to plug into this, and it can only go in one way. So you don't have to worry about plugging it in backwards or anything. And yeah, these the CPU 4-pin and 8-pins can definitely be a struggle because you have two different connectors that they are not combined. They're
Here, you go
separate
ahead and do
pieces.
that.
You want me to do this one? Yeah, this one can be pretty difficult. You almost sometimes you can do it while they're separated, but sometimes you can't because sometimes they have to hold each other down. But we were able to get it. And then we'll take this extra cable, just feed it back through like that. All right, so now this one I think might be a little bit easier. I don't know, what do you think, Matt? 24-pin easier? Sure. So this one is this giant cable. Do you see this tiny little clip right here? You gotta make sure that's under it or it's not gonna plug in. So this one's gonna go like that. And I almost recommend using two hands because it's a pretty rigid cable.
They need to go together there.
Yes, it'll need to go together like under that piece before it plugs in because you won't be able to plug in.
Oh, they can't marry each other.
They can't marry each other.
No.
You should have just put like an old man's costume on.
That would have been kind of cool. We probably have one. We have a bunch of costumes in the back for when we do our weird video like ad spots and stuff. All right, so basically this computer is ready to turn on, aside from the graphics card. We'll put that in a minute. This part's a little bit fun. So we have all these little connectors we gotta plug in. So this right here is USB 3. That's what powers these USB ports on the top. So we're gonna find where that is on the board, and it's right here. So we'll run that through the same spot that we did the power supply connector. In this one, do you see this little notch right here? Mm-hmm. It lines up with this notch. So it's gonna plug in just like this. And I would try to be a little bit careful with this one because you can bend pins, so try to go straight in if you can. You're missing a little bit. Go over to the left. Yep. Let me see real quick. You might have. So no, you did that one right. Let's go ahead and do the hardest part next. So these little guys here are called your front panel connectors. You see like how you have a power button here and a reset switch? That's what these are. And then you see these little LEDs? That's all this stuff is. So that stuff always goes at the bottom of the motherboards. I'm gonna feed that stuff up through here. And we'll turn it back over so Matt can see. And then I'm probably just gonna help you do this one because this one is really hard and you have to have some insane eyesight. But if Matt can zoom in on this, let's see if Matt can actually get it. You see these tiny letters here, Tom? Mm-hmm. Those tiny letters are telling you which one to plug each one into.
Oh.
I'm curious, can you actually read them?
No.
No? Yeah, so this part's pretty difficult and it's not the most essential. As long as you can get the power switch plugged in, you're good. And I can tell you on every board that's a newer board, the power switch always goes on the top row, far left next to the missing pin. All right, so those are all plugged in. We kind of push those back through to make them look nice. All right, so this right here is HD audio. You see these two ports up here? Mm-hmm. That's what controls those. So that one can feed right through here. You'll definitely be able to do this one. It's not too bad. Do you notice how there's one missing pin here? It's just blank.
Yeah.
That's going to go to this here. You see this row of pins? Are you able to see that okay? Or is it looks next to impossible?
No, I can see it. But
it just plugs in one way. So you really can't mess this one up. The pins are very rigid on this, so they're very hard to bend. It's possible, but they're easy to bend back if you bend them though. That's the good news. So your bent pin is, the missing pin is up top. So you're gonna want, yes, that way.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, there it is.
Hey, there you go.
All right, good job. So now we're gonna put in the graphics card. So this, you've done this before with other builds. So you're gonna unscrew this. Okay, so now this is another fun part. It's gonna go in this bracket. I think you know that. So you need to pop this out. So you're basically gonna wiggle that back and forth.
This one?
This right here. So you basically just, it's like, they call them break-off brackets. So if you use this hand and push it out towards you first.
You talking about this?
Are you doing the right thing? I don't know, I can't really see. Yeah, just keep wiggling it back and forth and it'll break off eventually. All right.
Perfect.
Sometimes they'll come screwed in, by the way, guys, but this one is just a break off. So now take your graphics card, and this should be a lot easier than any of these smaller builds that you've seen before. You should be able to just line that up real easily.
There we go.
There you go. All right, so now you're gonna need to put a screw right in there to hold the graphics card down.
This one, the one that came out of it.
That's fine. I'll grab you another one to replace the other screw. I think we might have a working computer after this, maybe. That's always the fun part though. Matt and I build a lot of PCs and they don't always work. Okay, so the only thing we have left to plug in, I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of this because we don't need it. This controls our RGB fans in the front. So this just uses a SATA connector, and luckily we have one here. Do you see this little notch right there? Mm-hmm. That little notch is gonna line up with this little notch. Yeah, we're basically good. Now, do you see how ugly all this is? Doesn't look very good. So we're gonna do a little bit of cable management because I think everything's plugged in right. So I usually like to tie as much as I can together because that's just how you make the back look the best. And you wanna make sure that you can fit the back panel back on. So don't do so much that it's not gonna be able to lay flat anymore. You know all about zip ties, right? You've been using zip ties for probably longer than I've been alive.
Yep.
Out of curiosity, did they have zip ties when you were a kid?
No.
Did they really not?
No.
Wow. Was that like a big thing when they came out?
Yep.
Really? Big ties were a big thing. What about duct tape?
I don't know when duct tape came out.
But you feel like they've had that forever?
Yeah.
I've never really been a big duct tape fan. Everybody always talks about how great duct tape is, and I feel like I rarely use duct tape. But I think with these two zip ties, I'm just gonna call it there, because that's pretty good. Now the worst part is just getting the rear panel back on. So we're gonna take this, and you remember the rear panel. We can kind of do this part together, because Matt and I sometimes have to do this. So at the rear panel, can you push down the top for me? And you'll have to get both ends. So if you get this and this, all right, now we're gonna push forwards. All right, and now we can go ahead and we'll just put our hinge back on. All right, and now you can close it. Let's peel off this, you wanna do the peel? Because it's pretty satisfying. Oh yeah. All right, so now the fun part is we need to see if it actually works. So Matt and I always keep a handy dandy power cable down here. And then we make sure that that's flipped to on because there is a power button on the back of pretty much all power supplies. And now you can press this button right up there. It's up.
Oh.
It's off.
It's on, it's off.
It might be doing a boot loop.
Oh.
Yep.
Yep, now it's on.
And then you can change your colors with this button here. You gonna try to change colors?
The colors are on the front.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh. Yeah, if you press this button here next to the power button.
So when did all these colors come out?
When did they all come out?
Yeah.
Honestly, like lighting in computers, I think got popular like maybe 10, 15 years ago, but they didn't used to have RGB. They didn't used to be able to do cool things like this, where you could just press a button and get different colors. It used to just be one color. Like you could get a computer with blue fans or a blue light. Like I had blue back in the day, and I think Matt, what did you usually have?
Red.
Red. So I never got,
I don't know why I did.
he's a UK guy, but he has red. But yeah, once RGB came out, that really changed the game because that is just pretty. I mean, it just looks fun, it looks gamery, but it works.
How do you know?
Now, what's that?
How do you know it actually works?
That's the final test. We're gonna turn it back off and we're gonna take it over to our station over there, and Matt will follow us and we'll make sure it actually turns on. Because we know it turns on, we just don't know if we're actually getting display out. And that's pretty common, to build a computer that works but doesn't work.
It works but doesn't work. Oh, wait, one second.
And the white one.
So you all sell components for computers. Is that what?
Sometimes. We don't, like up front, yes, we sell like we call them
Well, what's the
peripherals.
benefit of you all trying to get people to make their own computer?
There isn't one. No, I'm just kidding. Well, so that's a good question because the big difference is you used to be able to save a lot of money building your own PC. Like this PC here, let's say rewind to 2 years ago, we probably could have built this for what, like a few $100? But now building something like this even is gonna cost you $600 to $700. So as a pre-built company like us, a lot of times with PCBros.tech, we can buy our parts in bulk or at a discounted rate straight from the manufacturer, which you used to own a business too, so you know about that, where you can buy stuff in bulk get it cheaper than the normal consumer can. And then when you do it yourself, it ends up costing the same or less, and they don't have to worry about building it themselves.
Right.
All right. So it's on. So now we just need to see if we get any display out.
It wouldn't do display out without power to the monitor.
The other day we actually had I don't know if I told you about that, but we had a customer that was having problems with the monitor not working. Yep, it works. She was having problems with the monitor, and she said, does it need to be plugged into the wall? After I had been talking on the phone for like half an hour, and I was like, yeah. All right, so yeah, this is basically all we need. So now we take our Windows USB. Matt, what'd you do with it?
Oh, great.
What'd you do with it? All right, so this is how we get Windows on it, because the drives don't come with Windows on them, you know what I mean? It just comes blank. So we're gonna go ahead and restart it. And when we restart it, it should automatically boot into that. That's our Windows 10 installation drive. So we'll install Windows off of this drive.
Did I hear that Windows 11 is coming out?
You did. Windows 11 is actually a thing. I don't think when is it coming out?
24th of June, I think.
24th of June. It's not really a big thing. I mean, some people make it to be a bigger deal than it is. Really, it just looks different. But yeah, fun fact as well, if you guys decide to build a computer at home and you need one of these Windows 10 USBs, we actually do make them and sell them at PCBros.tech with the activation on them ready to go.
One big ad.
Just one big ad. First, we shouted out our merch, which I'm actually wearing some too. All right, so we'll go ahead and install Windows. And this really, I mean, you've basically done everything, you know, you built the computer, but we'll just skip this for now because, you know, we don't have to activate it. We always install Windows 10 Pro because it's Pro, and, you know, Home doesn't sound as cool as Pro. And then here's where you pick your drive to install it on. You remember how we installed a 500 gig drive? You're never gonna actually get 500 gigs. So we have 465. It doesn't mean that there's stuff on it. It just means that the drive isn't truly 500 gigs. I really couldn't, it has something to do with the Windows partitions and everything. McAllister will put a really long explanation on the screen. He'll actually do a voiceover, explaining why Windows takes up extra space that technically isn't there.
Hey there, McAllister here. So the reason that your storage drives seem to never contain the described amount of storage is because the advertised storage is made by counting in base 10, or what we refer to more commonly as the decimal system, while computers work with different forms of counting such as base 2 or binary. In simple terms, the conversion from base 2 to base 10 causes the discrepancy. For example, the way people count gigabytes is 1,000 megabytes to 1 gigabyte. However, a computer using binary will define it as 1 gigabyte to 1,024 megabytes. So if we had a 500,000 megabyte hard drive and we wanted to know how many gigabytes are on it, we could divide it by 1,000 to see that it makes 500 gigabytes. But if instead we divided it by the binary definition of a megabyte, we would have a hard drive with about 488.28125 gigabyte hard drive. And that's all for me, so let's bring Jackson and Tom back in here to finish the video.
So overall, did you think it was easy or hard to do this?
Don't try this at home.
Now, do you think if you were to watch like a YouTube video at home and not have me to help you, could you do it yourself?
Yes.
You think so? Okay.
Yeah.
What was the hardest part, do you think?
Finding a placement for all the screws.
Yeah, the screws can be difficult on the motherboard. A lot of times they don't line up well and everything, so that part can be fun. And there's probably about 10 to 15 screws on every computer that you're going to have to screw in. And that's not including like fans, hard drives, SSD, and all of that crazy stuff that you could go out and install yourself as well. You think of anything else, Matt?
No. It was a good experience.
Good experience.
I really believe that people can build their own computers. It's not as intimidating as I thought it would be.
Now, do you think if we were to have you build another one, could you do it on your own, or would you still probably need a little bit of guidance?
I could probably do it on my own.
All right, well, you ready to do another one? So we hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure you check out our other two YouTube channels and also our twitch.tv/ToastyBros. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
And we'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.
And hey, in case you guys didn't know, we actually do sell these computers when we're done. So if you're lucky, you might get the Grandpa Built Gaming PC.
PCBros.tech, best place to buy PC hardware. Yeah, if you don't want to build it and go through that whole process, just buy it from us. Link down below. See you guys in the next one. Goodbye.